Okay. It says my internet connection is unstable, but it's setting it up.
Okay. All right, we'll hope for the best. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Risk Takers, Dream Makers live interview series. I am Andrea Kiesling, the co-founder of the Risk Takers, Dream Makers project.
And I'm Ann Barwick, owner of A Strong You. I do personal development coaching, and I'm also the co-founder of RTDM, Risk Takers, Dream Makers, where we love to celebrate passionately purposeful women.
Yes, we love sharing and celebrating these stories of everyday women who are living the dream in hopes to inspire other women to go for their dreams as well. And these particular talks are designed to be interactive, so please feel free to chat, in the comment box, ask questions, and let us know that you're here.
Yeah, let us know if where you're coming from, where you're showing up from. We love to, I love to hear about the weather you're having. I'm always curious about that, what's going on in your world. So give us a shout out and comment below.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us tonight. We are especially excited to introduce Lauren Klitzsch. She is a holistic health coach, and Lauren's going to be sharing some really interesting topics that are especially relevant right now. We will definitely give you the opportunity to ask Lauren questions once she shares with us her message. And I think this is going to be really great. Lauren, we are so excited to hear from you. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate your invitation to come on tonight and share some information about toxins and detoxing and about why that's so important in our life right now. And I love what you guys are doing, and I'm happy to be part of this really inspiring and awesome community. So thank you for inviting me tonight. This is going to be really fun. I'm really excited about it. And like Andrea said, I'm a holistic health coach. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I became a mom about 5 years ago, it ignited something in me and started making a lot of changes in our health, the way we ate especially, and just became really passionate about food and our food system. And that has led me to where I am today. And I'm just really excited to share this information, everything that I have learned on my health journey so far with other people who may be interested in well. So I'm gonna dive right in for our topic tonight. And really first I wanna say, why do we need to talk about toxins? And I think that we would all agree that although we are living longer, we're not living healthier, right? We have 1 in 3 people in the United States are suffering from some sort of cardiovascular disease. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 2 men will have cancer at some time in their life. We've had several chronic diseases that have reached epidemic proportions in our country, especially obesity and Alzheimer's, and even autoimmune diseases have reached that epidemic level in our country. So disease is very prevalent, and so we want to try to figure out why is that. And toxins are a very important part of that conversation. And I really love learning about this topic because I had absolutely no idea that this whole world existed. And once I started diving in, became very, very interested because I had no idea, and I really wanted other people to know as well. So, what is toxicology? And so that is the science of examining the toxic health effects for humans or for the environment of whatever chemicals might come in. And in the United States, there are over 80,000 chemicals out there. And the unfortunate thing is that we only know the effects of 1 to 2% of those chemicals. There really needs to be a new system, a new regulatory system put into place that hopefully would require chemicals to be proven safe before they are put on the market, either in our food or personal care products, household cleaning items. We really need to know that beforehand, before it goes on the shelves. And so there's this lack of transparency where manufacturers don't always necessarily need to disclose what is in their products. And so, I'm really going to dive into the food part of this topic tonight. I did mention also, there's household items and personal care items, but I'm really just going to focus on food for tonight. And so a couple of terms that you may hear me use, or you may hear other people use when they're talking about toxins, are just different types, different classifications of toxins. And so I want to go over those really quick, just so you have an understanding of what those are and how these chemicals can affect our bodies. The first one is neurotoxins, and these are substances that alter the structure or function of the nervous system. And so that can result, exposure from toxins like this can result in permanent damage on the developing brain, including behavioral and cognitive problems. So autism, ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, those can all result from neurotoxins. Another one is endocrine disruptors, and those chemicals that can either increase or decrease normal hormone levels. They can mimic the body's natural hormones or alter the natural production of hormones, and that's linked with developmental, reproductive, brain, immune, and other problems as well. Carcinogens are substances that are capable of causing cancer, and carcinogens are classified into 4 different groups, all the way from it's probably a carcinogen to it's not carcinogenic. And so that's, a number system 1 through 4, either a class 1 carcinogen all the way to class 4. Another one is obesogens, and those chemicals can contribute to obesity. They disrupt the normal metabolic processes and increase susceptibility to weight gain. And then last, there's also just allergens, which are chemicals that can trigger mild to severe allergic reactions on your skin, eyes, nose, throat, and lungs. So there's lots of different types of toxins that are out there. Now, when we talk about toxins, some people may think, well, I'm not really concerned about this because they're in such small amounts. It's not really going to do anything, but you have to think about it in terms of the cumulative effect. So it's the repeated cumulative exposure over time when we keep getting these small amounts into our body, and then that chemical builds up, and therefore the risks build up. So you really have to think about the cumulative effect of what these toxins can have in your body. And especially when you're eating food, how many meals do you eat over a lifetime? How many tons of food are you putting into your body? So that's actually quite a lot. And when we're talking about food, a quote that I think is very poignant is by Anne Wigmore. And she said that the food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So I'm going to say that again because I think it really hits it home. The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. And there she's referring to the chemicals and all of that bad stuff that they're adding into our food. And I've said for several years, when are people going to realize that the food industry is very similar to the tobacco industry, and what they're putting in and on our food is killing us and making us sick. So food is a very important topic when you're talking about toxins. And so first I'm going to kind of dive into what is organic, because I think that's one of the main things for when you're trying to avoid exposure to toxins is organic. And so I'm going to kind of talk about what is organic, what is not organic, just so you have a better understanding of what that labeling means, and also so that you can make just educated purchases. So an organic label on produce. We're going to start with produce, for example, so fruits and vegetables. That means that there were no pesticides or glyphosate used, but they can be sprayed with certain natural and synthetic ingredients. Organic should also mean non-GMO. And the USDA requires that a farmer must wait 3 years and use no pesticides on land he hopes to one day call organic. So that speaks a little bit to how long these pesticides can stick around. They have to wait 3 years. But you also have to consider with organic, just because you're buying organic produce does not necessarily mean that your produce has absolutely no pesticide residue on it. There is risk of cross-contamination with wind and such. So you don't always know for sure, although I do suggest buying organic. And a really good tip too is when you're in the grocery store, if you're buying produce in the grocery store, the PLU code for organic produce always starts with a 9. So if you're not sure if something is organic or not, that's a good thing to look for, is that number 9 on the PLU code for the produce. A really good tool to reference when you're buying organic, because of course buying organic is more expensive, is the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen list, which is a list that they release every year. And it's a great reference tool because if buying organic is not in your budget, it gives you a really good idea of where you should start and which produce you should really focus on trying to prioritize buying organic, because the EWG, the Environmental Working Group, they analyze data from the Department of Agriculture, and they showed that nearly 70% of fresh produce sold in the US contains residues from potentially harmful chemicals. So again, buying organic is important. And the rankings for this Dirty Dozen list are based on not only the percentage of the samples of that fruit or vegetable that had pesticides on them, but also the number and the amount of pesticides. And so on the EWG's 2020 Dirty Dozen list are things like strawberries, spinach, kale, apples, grapes, tomatoes, celery, potatoes, and you can go to ewg.org and get this list directly from there. But those are some fruits and vegetables that you definitely want to always try to buy organic. An interesting thing that you won't see on the Dirty Dozen list is that because they usually only do fresh fruits and vegetables, not dried fruits, you don't see raisins on there, but the USDA actually tested raisins this year for the first time in a long time. And raisins actually are the worst offenders for all of the fruits tested. It's quite interesting. 99% of non-organic raisins had residues of at least 2 pesticides. So raisins, although they're not on the list, are something that you want to consider buying organic as well. The EWG also does publish a Clean 15 list, which are sort of the opposite, the fruits and vegetables that have the least amount of pesticide residue on it. And that's things like avocados, pineapple, onions, sweet corn, eggplant, cauliflower. Those are things that maybe you can buy conventionally if, again, budget is an issue. So that's a really good tool just to refer to. So why do we need to choose organic? I kind of briefly alluded to that. Pesticides that are classified as possible human carcinogens can cause cancer, and many that are used in the US have been banned elsewhere, like for example in the European Union, but they're still allowed in the United States, which is a little bit fishy. And studies have linked improved fertility and birth outcomes, reduced evidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and lower BMI to eating a higher concentration of organic fruits and vegetables. So the health benefits of eating organic are definitely there. Now, when we talk about things like meat, dairy, and eggs, and what organic means there. So if you're buying organic beef, organic chicken, organic turkey, that basically just means that that animal was fed an organic diet. So whatever it was that that animal was eating was organic, whether it was organic corn, soy, grass, it means that that was organic. It does not mean that the animal was raised humanely. So while organic meat is great, you also want to take a look at how the animal was raised, because that does have a big effect on the quality of the meat as well. So for example, like with cows, cows are meant to graze on grass. So you want to look for organic grass-fed beef. Really, really confusing, I find oftentimes for people, is the egg carton in the grocery store. You walk up to the egg carton and there's, 12 different types of eggs to buy from, and you have the, $2.99 carton of eggs over here, which is really tempting to buy when you see over here it's like $6.99 for a carton of eggs. So you're like, well, of course I'm gonna buy the $2.99 carton of eggs, but I want to tell you a little bit about what the difference between those are, because it can be very, very confusing. So you also may see a cage-free label on eggs, and simply put, that means that the chickens that those eggs came from are not caged. Oftentimes in large industrialized farming, those chickens are kept in very small cages. So cage-free eggs are able to roam free in a building. It can be very crowded and overcrowded and not great living conditions, but they are allowed to roam free. And they have unlimited access to food and fresh water, but they do not have access to outdoors. Free range is another one that you might see. That means that eggs come from hens that have some sort of access to the outdoors. It simply implies that a door exists and the chickens may or may not use it. So they're able to freely move between indoor and outdoor if they choose. And then the last one that you might see is pasture raised. And so if the carton says pasture raised and certified humane, that means that the hen was given 108 square feet of outdoor space and space indoors in a barn. So that's as close to, the farm that you're going to get if you're going to buy eggs from mass-produced or just, large-scale egg production farms. So that just a little bit of clarification on there. Organic eggs mean that the hens who laid those eggs were fed an organic diet. A quick note on fish, because there is a lot of concern about toxicity in fish as well. Fish can be very, very toxic because they concentrate high levels of chemical residues in their fat and their flesh. And so that could be mercury, microplastics, PCBs, nothing that you want to be eating through your fish. So you always want to buy, for example, wild salmon, because farm salmon especially is actually dyed pink. They inject it with artificial colors to make it look more similar to their wild cousins. So there's oftentimes artificial coloring in farm salmon. So that's just something also to consider when you're buying fish. So you always want to buy fish from a reputable dealer there. And then the last category that I want to talk about is processed food, organic processed food. So like crackers, bars, chips, snacks, on a lot of bags, you'll see that organic label. And so that when you see that organic label on processed food, that means that the food is free from artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives, no GMOs, no high fructose corn syrup, no synthetic herbicides, pesticides, or fungicides in any part of the production. So that product needs to contain 95% organic ingredients, excluding water and salt. But again, organic on the package does not necessarily mean that it's healthy. While it is a better option, there are other things that you still want to turn that package over and look at the nutrition label to see things like sugar on that particular food item. And I think a really, really good, another quote that I really love that I think is important just to kind of consider is, if it comes from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. Because a lot of the processed food in our era that we have become so reliant on in our standard American diet does contain a lot of added chemicals and toxins that are negatively affecting our health. So some of the things that you want to look at in packaged food would be things like artificial colors, red 40, yellow 5, blue 2. Those have been linked to behavioral issues in children. Preservatives, they're really only added in there to give food a longer shelf life. There's really no concern for your health. You also want to look for artificial sweeteners and artificial and natural flavors. To kind of talk about what that means a little bit, So natural flavors is actually the fourth most common ingredient on a nutrition label for processed food. And not all natural flavors are created equally. So that is a really good umbrella term that manufacturers are able to include on their labels, but it can be a really good hiding spot for some of these toxins because they are not required by the FDA to disclose what is in their natural flavor. So that natural flavor, that one ingredient that you see on the nutrition label, can actually contain anywhere between 50 to 100 ingredients. So you really have to be very careful with foods that do include artificial and natural flavors. Really anything that you can't pronounce on a food label is kind of our rule of thumb in our household. You want to try to stay away from. And so those are just a couple things that you want to look at when you're looking at food labels. And again, we talked about this before, the FDA is reactionary instead of preventative. And after a product hits the market, then they evaluate the safety of certain chemicals through research and adverse event monitoring. So we really need a new system where before products are put out on the shelf, those chemicals are tested to make sure that they're not going to negatively affect us. So toxicity in processed food comes from ingredients on the label, but also from chemicals leaching into it from storage methods. So I'm going to talk a little bit just for a minute or two about food storage because it's a really, really important thing to consider, especially as we get into summer and the warmer months. And I'll tell you why that is in a second. But if you're a meal prepper or if you like to prep food, I strongly suggest, if you don't already, to store and prep food in glass containers instead of plastic containers. Those plastic containers, if you heat them in the microwave, can leach chemicals into your food. So like, for example, this is a plastic or a glass container that we use. We have a whole set of them in our house that we meal prep and store food in. I also love mason jars. We store a lot of food in our mason jars, and that's another good alternative to use instead of plastic. So if there's one takeaway that you guys have from tonight, I think that would be a really good one to have, is just not to microwave things in plastic and to switch over to glass for food storage. Another thing too is water bottles. A lot of them are plastic. And, when it's hot outside in the summer, you leave your water bottle in the car and then you get back in and you take a drink of it. Well, heat is, again, causing chemicals from the plastic to leach into the water that you're drinking. So stainless steel is really the way to go for water bottles. I really love this brand, especially for my kids, because they can't chew the straws. For some reason, my kids love to chew the straws on water bottles, but this is a stainless steel water bottle. And so chemicals are not going to leach into that from the heat. And also stainless steel food storage, lunch boxes for your kids if they're in school are also another great alternative, stainless steel. When we're talking about cookware, if you buy, organic, really high quality food, but then have poor quality cookware, you could still be getting chemicals migrating into your food through the cookware that you use. So for example, Teflon. Instead of Teflon, some other good alternatives would be cast iron, stainless steel again, glass cookware. Those would be some things to possibly switch to when you're able to. The food packaging itself on food items, manufacturers do not have to disclose what kind of chemicals are in the packaging either. And so if you take, for example, a bag of potato chips, it has that shiny, smooth look on the inside of the bag. Well, that is a chemical. And it's actually a class of chemicals called fluorochemicals. And fluorochemicals will start building up in your body. And the CDC reported that over 99% of all Americans have fluorochemicals in our body, according to toxicology research. And fluorochemicals are related to pretty much every bad thing, bad health effect that we can have, like reproductive toxicity, effect on the brain, the immune system, increasing cancer risk. So another thing with that food packaging, if you think about microwavable popcorn or microwavable rice, you get them in those bags or those packets and you just pop them in the microwave. Well, they have that shiny material, those chemicals on the inside, and they're going to migrate into your food. So a really simple thing to do is just to buy corn, yellow popcorn at the store, and pop it yourself. You know, put some coconut oil and some salt or some nutritional yeast on it, and pop it yourself on the stove instead of in the microwave. Another thing too, with canned food is, you'll see here, it says non-BPA lining, right? We all know that BPA has been removed from water bottles, cans, and everything like that. But what a lot of people don't know is that manufacturers just replaced BPA with other chemicals like BPS or BPF, which are also toxic and have some harmful health effects. So you really want to do some research when you're buying canned food. I know like Amy's is a brand that, you know, does things a little bit differently, but if you can, you know, buy tomatoes in a glass jar, or beans. You can buy dried beans in bulk and avoid the whole can situation altogether. So those are some things just in terms of purchasing habits that you might want to change. And I think, you know, just to get to some solutions for like, what should we do? You know, because now that we know that the food industry is not always fighting for our health, we have to do that ourselves. It's mostly just profit. You know, pesticides have been widely used since the 1950s because they increased farm yield. Preservatives have been added to foods because it increases the shelf life on that it can sit at the grocery store. So we really have to be advocates for ourselves. So continue to educate yourself on this topic is very, very important. Also grow your own food if you're able to, because that way you have complete control over the whole process and know exactly what does or does not go onto that food. Also know your farmer. You can, you know, join a CSA or go to the farmer's market and ask them questions about how they grow their food. Sometimes farms will even let you come out and tour the farm, which is really cool, a really fun experience where you get to see where your food is grown and really get to know who is growing your food for you. You know, shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Most of the processed food is in the middle. So avoid, you know, the packaged food to the extent that is reasonable. You know, my family, we do not completely avoid packaged food. It's, you know, I'm not going to pretend that we do, but there are a lot of things that we have switched to or switched away from. So avoiding packaged food just to the extent that you are able. Buy organic when available, wash your produce, come home before you eat anything, always wash it. And also home cooking is so important. Again, because just like growing your food, you have complete control over the ingredients that are going into the meal that you're preparing for your family. And then become a label detective. So really learn what to look out for on those labels, how to read those labels, and what are some of the things that you want to stay away from. You know, in terms of actual detoxing, there are tons of very easy, simple things that you can implement in your daily life that can help or facilitate, you know, detoxing from these chemicals. You know, drinking warm lemon water in the morning, just staying hydrated in general, exercising, sweating, going to the sauna. Your body can get rid of those toxins through sweat. There are things like dry brushing and Epsom salt baths, lymphatic massage. All of those sound really nice too, right? And then also eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables and a rainbow of colors. So those cruciferous vegetables are like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. They have a lot of nutrients that promote detoxification. And so those are just a couple of things that you can do in addition to avoiding the toxins in the first place, to just help your body sort of daily detox habits to incorporate. So that's pretty much all that I had to share with you guys tonight, but I just want to reiterate again, I think the most important thing to take away from the message tonight is just to be your own health advocate, learn about what it is that is going to be health promoting instead of negative effects on your health. It's really, really important to continue to learn, because it's not always, you know, a lot of companies don't want you to know this information, unfortunately. So you have to do a lot of the work yourself.
Lauren, you're incredibly knowledgeable on this topic, and also your passion is very obvious. And I know that really is what drives your knowledge and, you know, just chasing after these answers. And like you said, we do have to be our own advocates when it comes to health. And there's a cost of convenience. So, you know, we as a consumer are paying that sometimes when we're unaware of this type of thing. So this conversation is really important. And like I said, especially today, it's extremely relevant. We've got to know these types of things so that we can best care for our own bodies and, you know, our health. So we appreciate all the information you shared. And I really feel like there should be several sequels to this because there's just so much more to unpack in all of these topics. So I have a couple questions, and of course, Anne will help get the viewers involved if they have questions as well. One thing I want to ask, Lauren, you know, you've been in this health realm for a while. What kind of trends are you seeing? Are you seeing that people are starting to develop an awareness around some of the topics that you've discussed? I mean, what are some of those trends?
Yeah, I think prevention, thank goodness, is really starting to gain some traction. You know, prevention for a long time, there was no money in prevention, right? And so it wasn't very popular. But a lot of people are starting to realize how important prevention is. And there are so many things that you can do because lifestyle is so important when it comes to your likelihood of disease. And that's another trend, you know, lifestyle medicine and food as medicine. Those are all really, really important topics that I think a lot of people are seeing more and more messaging about, which is really, really exciting. And that people are starting to heed what their mother says, eat more fruits and vegetables. You know, our moms were right. And so that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So let me ask you a question, kid related, because we know that you have two little ones. So what would be your advice for parents who maybe haven't always practiced this type of lifestyle, but would like to start, you know, trending toward this, making some changes in their household? What are some of the ways that you would recommend starting?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, you have to give yourself and your family grace in the process, right? Because it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be easy. I know firsthand, you know, feeding a toddler can sometimes be very frustrating and stressful. And so you have to start from a place of giving yourself grace and knowing that everyone is learning and growing together. But one of the most important things when you are trying to make shifts towards healthy eating with kids is just repeated exposure. You know, it can take kids more than a dozen times, you know, maybe it's 50 times before they actually try a fruit or vegetable that you put in front of them, if they're very picky. But if you continue to do it, eventually they will try that fruit or vegetable. And there are lots of really fun ways that you can do that too, with, you know, making it into really cute shapes or using cute little sticker, like little forks and stuff to make it fun. I am a complete advocate of playing with your food. And also growing food with your children also increases the likelihood that they will eat it. So growing food, starting your own garden is a really, really good thing to consider as well. And I also think that just, it is hard, as I mentioned before, but knowing that it is totally worth it, you know, that we are creating a nutritional legacy in our children. You know, the whole study of epigenetics that is relatively new, but, you know, what they're showing is that the way that we eat and our genes, you know, we can affect the way our genes are expressed through what we eat, right? They, you know, fruits and vegetables can turn on good genes and off bad genes, right? And so what we eat and how we are changing our genes can affect like 3 to 4 generations deep in our children. So we are truly leaving this nutritional legacy for our children, which is really exciting when, you know, Dr. Katz has come out and said that this might be the first generation where the children do not outlive their parents, you know, or have longer lifespans than their parents. So, you know, start with grace, be consistent and persistent. Don't force it. You know, if they say they don't want it, don't make a big deal out of it. But then also just really know that the hard work and effort that you're putting into it is worth it. And it's going to be, once you get past maybe some of those uphill moments, it's going to be really, really exciting on the other side.
Yeah. So persistence, involving them, And the piece you mentioned about the legacy, I think when you put it in that perspective, it makes it a little easier for us as parents to want to set that example when you think of it in such a long-term, experience for generations to come. So that's really interesting. The other thing I want to mention before Anne will open it up, Lauren, so you're a holistic health coach. And again, Lauren just has an incredible amount of information, and she's helped a lot of people make excellent decisions and help them make this transition. Talk a little bit about what some of your services are as a holistic health coach.
Yeah, so I love working with women and families, really just to help them to harness the power of medicine that is in food and lifestyle. So whether that looks like, if you do have a picky eater, and figuring out strategies and recipes on how to get more produce into your kids, or if you are a mom and you are tired or stuck and just not feeling like you are headed in the right direction, I love to meet with women and talk with them about what their goals are and figure out how to get them there. I think that there is so much that we can do in terms of effect on our health with very simple, small changes. And making lifestyle habits that are sustainable forever. I am not an advocate of diets. I don't think diets are effective. I think they're very restricting, both, tangibly and also emotionally and mentally, but really creating lifestyle habits that are sustainable, because we want to figure out how can we get you to be healthy into your 80s and 90s, right? So that you can enjoy your grandchildren and great grandchildren. So I offer one-on-one coaching. I also do group workshops, pantry makeovers, grocery store tours, anything like that.
That's exciting. Well, we will make sure that we get all of your information for everyone to be able to reach out and contact you. Before we do that, Anne, what questions do you have?
Yeah, so a plethora of information that was just really deep and thorough. And I love one of the things that you just recently said, Lauren, is not only the persistence, but giving yourself grace when you're trying this. So I know y'all have younger kids, and I'm a mother of 2 teenagers. And I can remember those struggles of having the little ones and going in the grocery store and being like, I'm going to eat green and clean. And but there were times where I'd have to throw up my hands and be like, okay, I'm just getting a box of Annie's Kraft macaroni and cheese or whatever it is, but to know, I think to give myself grace and know that wasn't, and just keep the persistence going, right? Keep trying. And the prevention that you said, it's kind of like being proactive. Mm-hmm. So if I were a mom and feeling overwhelmed, what would you say? Like, if I had to choose one thing that would be the best thing for me to focus on for my children, and I know that's hard, but what would be one thing?
One thing that I didn't mention in this talk tonight was that thoughts can also be very toxic. And I think as a mom, we have to come from a place where we are just emotionally, mentally, and spiritually fulfilled, so that we can show up and be our best selves for our children, our spouses, our family, our friends. And so, really learning how to capture those thoughts that are not serving you and learn how to change those into positives, I think is really, really important, because, you can eat, there's a saying I think out there on social media right now, you can eat all the kale and broccoli that you want, but if your mind isn't right, you're not going to be healthy. And if you are emotionally not in a healthy place, that is also going to affect a lot of other things, stress and just chronic, when we are in like our fight or flight mode chronically day after day after day, that can lead to inflammation and lower our immune systems. And that's not good. So I think, if there's one place to start, it's with your thoughts.
I love that. Wow. That's really powerful. because it's true. When you're feeling so overwhelmed, if you can't calm your mind down and the thoughts that are coming through, it's really hard to figure out those best choices to make for you and for your family. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. So one last question. Would you tell us the Dirty Dozen website again?
Sure. So that is put out by the Environmental Working Group. Their website is ewg.org.
Okay, great. I'll add that in the comments below for everyone else. Thanks,
Yeah.
Lauren. I think Andrea has like the big final question.
The final question for you, Lauren. What is a final bit of wisdom that you could leave with our viewers that you believe would impact them the most?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to keep the whole food thing going. And this is a good analogy, I think. So there's a saying that goes, the day that you plant the seed is not the day you reap the harvest. And I think that that is something in my own personal journey that I have really tried to heed and to build into my mindset, because so often, you know, we see other people being very successful on social media or just our acquaintances or whatever, but we don't know how long they've been working at it, right? And so the day you start a business does not mean that you're going to be an overnight success, right? There are so many things that go in the process from seed to harvest, just like there is in creating a business or making any sort of change in your life. There are so many steps in that process, and you can't, you know, fall into that comparison game or get down on yourself because it's not happening as quickly as you thought it would. You have to really, you have to, just like farmers, you really have to do the dirty work. You have to do the hard work and get in there and weed and water and, you know, really tend to that seed in order for it to grow and flourish and produce, you know, really beautiful fruit at the end. So I think that's the one thing that I really want to leave with people.
That's a great analogy. I like that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to walk away with that one. And again, that kind of goes back to the not being the overwhelmed with things, but the baby steps, planting that seed and knowing that it's a continual process that you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lauren, everything you shared with us was so powerful, so helpful, and so practical, things that we can, you know, implement changes with right away. So thank you so much for your time and for all the information that you shared. One last thing, would you mind letting everyone know where they could contact you, follow you, or just get in touch with you to find out more?
Sure, absolutely. So Instagram is a great place. You can follow me there or send me a message, just Lauren Klitzsch. My email address is laurenklitsch@gmail.com. And then my website, laurenklitsch.com, is under construction, and I'm hoping to have that up in about a week. So you can check back on that in a little bit.
Okay, great. We'll make sure those get in the comments so everyone can find you there. Again, Lauren, thank you so much for your time tonight, and thank you for all this valuable information.
Yeah, it was so fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And thanks everybody for joining in tonight.